Good morning, America. Calls growing in the U.S. after that second deadly crash. More than 20 airlines around the world now grounding that plane, but the U.S. still taking no action as American investigators arrive on the scene searching for clues. What brought down that Boeing 737 with 157 people on board? Now, new eyewitness accounts, smoke spotted before the jet hit the ground. We're live on the scene.
Winter storm warning, a massive new storm heading east set to slam the center of the country with snow and possible tornadoes. As this new video emerges, showing the terrifying moment, heavy winds send a light pole toppling onto a high school soccer field.
Breaking news, the U.S. now pulling all American diplomats from Venezuela as the crisis grows. The major announcement overnight.
State Department's new alert as millions of kids start spring break after a deadly incident. A teen falls from a balcony at one of the most popular destinations.
Basket brawl.
Bunker and Chris exchanging blows.
Chaos erupting on one NBA court overnight. Two players exchanging blows. And the fight on another court as Russell Westbrook comes under fire for threatening a fan and his wife.
And flipping the script, The Bachelor's Colton breaking all the rules.
All of this is over. I started this with 30 women, and now there aren't any more people that I'm dating.
Sending both finalists home after the woman he wants rejects him. Now, what do you do on a show that's just eliminated all its contestants?
Live in Times Square, this is Good Morning America.
And Good Morning America, great to be here with Cecilia and Paula. Welcome to you both. We want to get right to the latest on that deadly plane crash in Ethiopia. Killed 157 people, including 8 Americans. Just moments ago, Australia and Singapore joined the growing list of countries grounding that Boeing jet.
Yeah, more than 20 airlines around the world grounding those planes. And take a look at the flight radar. Those are the Boeing 737 MAX 8s in the air right now.
That plane model, the MAX 8, has been involved in 2 deadly crashes in just the last couple of months. And now some leaders here in the U.S. are also calling for airlines to ground the plane while the investigation is underway.
American investigators are on the scene now in Ethiopia. So is our chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman. He starts us off. Good morning, Matt.
Hey, guys, Ethiopian authorities are in possession of those flight recorders, but you see these hundreds of people behind me. It is their job to pick up the pieces of the fuselage. You can see how small some of them are. Check them out here, just all over this field, shredded. They're putting them into piles for an investigation that is going to last many weeks here.
This morning, crews cutting into the soil with excavators in the grim task of unearthing the remains of that doomed Ethiopian Airlines jet. First responders delicately picking through what's left of the personal belongings of the 157 people who died on board. American investigators now among those on the ground trying to determine what brought Flight 302 down just 6 minutes after takeoff. Witnesses describe seeing smoke coming from the rear of the plane before it crashed. It hit the earth with such force, most of what's left is in this crater. Investigators hope the black boxes will reveal what happened inside the cockpit both before and after the plane disappeared from radar. That plane never topping 1,200 feet off the ground.
Absolutely critical that the black boxes that were recovered get read immediately so we can figure out whether this was a problem with the airplane that affects the fleet worldwide.
This is now the second crash for a Boeing MAX 8 in less than 6 months. Last October, a Lion Air jet engaged a nose-down dive into the Java Sea after the pilots failed to disengage the autopilot, killing everyone on board. As investigators race to find answers, families around the world are in mourning. The victims from 35 different countries, 22 staffers from the UN, and there were 8 Americans. Among them, Antoine Lewis of Madison, Illinois. His family says he was a proud father and a captain in the Army.
He went doing the things that he loved, that he had a passion for. And his passion was just to make a better world.
And from Redding, California, Melvin and Bennett Riffle. 2 brothers on vacation. Melvin Riffle leaves behind his pregnant wife. She's due in May.
You can see the pieces of the fuselage have been put in this pile right here. And a lot of the work in this field is technical, but these workers are also dealing with the remains of humans on this flight, and that is obviously something that is much more difficult for them to deal with. Guys.
Yeah, that is just heartbreaking.
Such a tough scene there. And here at home, the fallout is growing now. Boeing stock taking a big hit, slipping more than 22 points, making for a $12.7 billion loss. And it is not just investors who are nervous this morning. We saw that growing list of international airlines grounding the Boeing 737 MAX 8. Our senior transportation correspondent David Curley joins us now. And David, we're hearing loud calls now from American carriers to do the same.
Yes, but they haven't so far. A third of the fleet, though, worldwide is grounded by airlines and countries this morning, while here the FAA is not ordering a grounding. So the American flying public, there are 72 aircraft you could be on today, 3 airlines here flying that aircraft. Singapore and Australia have now ordered that these aircraft not come into their airspace. This is a jet that just a couple of weeks ago was flying 8,500 times a week. The FAA is telling us there is just not evidence at this point to order a grounding. There is no tie between the 2 recent jets that have crashed. Now, there are similarities between both of these incidents. At takeoff, both aircraft were having trouble with control. It's called pitch, when the nose is going up and down and the pilots are having trouble controlling them. But we don't know whether the reason they were having trouble is actually connected. That's why the FAA says it will not order a grounding at this point. Now, Boeing is working on a software fix coming out of that first crash in Indonesia. The FAA says when that fix is ready next month, it will mandate that upgrade be put into the aircraft. Cecilia?
Yeah, and David, you said it. I mean, passengers this morning here in this country are going to be boarding those planes, and airlines are already hearing from some of them, people who are concerned about getting on one of these Boeing 737 MAX 8. So can they switch flights without being penalized?
It's difficult, and it depends on the airlines. The airlines tell us they're trying to accommodate passengers who might be worried. In fact, for refundable tickets, you can usually get a move to another flight and get off that aircraft. But sometimes they change the aircraft out just in the last day. You know, an aircraft has a maintenance problem, so they're bringing another one. It might be a MAX 8 that you're going to get on. Now, the Union for American Airline Flight Attendants reminded their members if they have a problem with the MAX 8, they don't have to fly it. That's allowed in their union rules. Once again, the black boxes with the Ethiopians have, they've not decided who's going to read them out yet. They've had them now for more than 24 hours. Do they need help? Will it be the British, the French, the Americans? Everybody wants to know what's on those boxes.
Okay, David Curley on this story from the beginning. Thank you, David. Paula?
And Boeing continues to stand by the MAX 8. We want to move down to that major new storm that is heading east, taking aim at the middle of the country right now. It is expected to bring blizzard conditions and flooding rain. Rob Marciano is here with the latest track. And Rob, good morning to you. Can you tell us the timing of this storm?
Well, it's a slow mover. It's down in the deep southwest, a cold core system. These are the mountains just east of Los Angeles and Pasadena and Wrightwood, just over the mountains of Mount Baldy. 4 to 8 inches overnight last night, with more snow coming today. And this will bring some severe weather. But it is, again, a slow mover, strong winds, large hail, a few tornadoes. This comes later on tonight and through tomorrow morning. Mostly West Texas, mostly straight line winds, which can be very dangerous. It's going to be a big wind maker. We want to take you back to Saturday. Look at this dramatic video out of Clarksville, Arkansas. Boom, that is a light pole that comes down at this high school soccer game, that stadium, that player getting hurt, and that referee suffering a broken leg. But it is a small miracle that nobody was killed in this event, just to give you an idea how dangerous just straight line winds can be at just 60 miles an hour. And we could have winds gusting over 70 miles an hour with this system over the next 36 hours. Wind alerts up from Oklahoma City up through Wichita, back through Albuquerque, Las Vegas as well. And you mentioned those blizzard warnings that will be going on for the next day or two just to the east of Denver. So we have it all with this storm. We'll keep you updated throughout the show.
All across the country. Okay, Rob, thanks very much. We're going to go to Washington now, where House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is making headlines, stoking a debate among Democrats with her strongest statement yet against moving to impeach President Trump. Our senior congressional correspondent Mary Bruce covering the story on Capitol Hill. And Mary, based on current facts, the speaker may not be for impeachment, but she is not holding back on President Trump.
George, Speaker Pelosi says President Trump is just not worth it. Now, she is not closing the door completely on impeachment, but she says that unless there is something so compelling and overwhelming and bipartisan that it's not worth it, because impeachment would greatly divide the country. The problem here is that not everyone in her party agrees, potentially setting up a showdown here with some of her more progressive members who are already openly calling for impeachment. But George, this may be a political calculus by Speaker Pelosi as we head into the 2020 presidential election. Democrats may feel it's politically politically advantageous for them to be up against a president who is being heavily investigated and scrutinized by Democrats here on the Hill, rather than one that is at the center of impeachment proceedings.
Yeah, but as you say, there are a lot of Democrats who want her to be more forthright about this.
Yeah, and we've already talked with many Democrats who are downplaying the speaker's remarks here. They say, look, we were at the beginning of this process, not at the end. And while there is a widespread belief among Democrats that any impeachment proceedings would need to have wide bipartisan support, they say they want to know what the investigations here discover. They want to see what the special counsel Robert Mueller finds before they make any final decisions on impeachment.
And those investigations obviously continue in Congress right now. And overnight, another new investigation here in New York.
Yeah, George, this is a new line of inquiry into the president's finances that stemmed directly from what Michael Cohen testified to here on the Hill. He told lawmakers that the president inflated his assets to try and secure a loan to buy the Buffalo Bills. And overnight, the New York Attorney General subpoenaed Deutsche Bank and Investors Bank for documents related to that failed NFL bid and several other major Trump Organization projects, including hotels in Chicago, in Florida, and right here in D.C.
That's a civil investigation, could lead to criminal referrals. What else are you keeping your eye on today?
Well, George, the former Vice President Joe Biden will be speaking out here in D.C. later this morning, speaking before a key labor group, the Firefighters Association. It's a group that has said they could reportedly get behind him and endorse him if he were to jump in the race. Joe Biden has said he's in the final stages of making that decision, so we will be keeping a close eye for any clues later this morning.
Yeah, they have been some of his strongest allies, so could see some clues today. Mary Bruce, thanks very much. Cecilia?
Okay, George, we're going to turn now to that breaking news overnight. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo pulling all the remaining U.S. diplomats out of Venezuela as the crisis there grows. Pompeo calling it a deteriorating situation, a power outage there paralyzing much of the country. Our senior foreign correspondent Ian Pannell has the latest. Good morning, Ian.
Yeah, good morning, Cecilia. It's hard to imagine the situation in Venezuela getting any worse, but that's exactly what's happening this morning as the country struggles to cope with yet another day of critical power outages. Overnight, with Venezuela in chaos, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo pulling all remaining U.S. diplomatic personnel out of the country. The secretary citing the deteriorating situation in Venezuela, now in the sixth day of a blackout in much of the country. With hospitals crippled, schools and stores closed, and reports of protesters and looters on the streets. Families now so desperate they're gathering water at drainage pipes next to this contaminated river. Amid the blackouts, oil exports grinding to a halt, which is making Venezuela's economic crisis even worse. President Maduro addressing the blackout last night, accusing America of sabotaging the infrastructure as part of a plot to overthrow the embattled leader, the U.S. denying it's interfered in the power grid. Meanwhile, Juan Guaido, the opposition leader currently recognized as the country's president by over 50 nations, trying to declare a state of emergency and allow the government to seek foreign aid. And that aid, desperately needed, is not just dirty water that people are drinking, they're also eating rotting food in order to survive. The situation in the capital, Caracas, this morning described as desperate. Paula.
Ian Pannell reporting from Venezuela. Ian, thank you. And we want to move now to new developments in the battle against ISIS. Heavy fighting is underway right now as American-backed troops attack the terror group's last remaining stronghold in Syria. ISIS now holding on to less than a square mile of territory. Our foreign correspondent, James Longman, is on the ground in eastern Syria for us. James, good morning to you.
Good morning, Paula. We're watching smoke rising over Baghouz this morning after a night of intense bombardment. We can still hear intermittent gunfire. And during this lull in the fight, we can see ISIS fighters on their bikes and putting up flags. This morning, we even heard their battle cries. This fight is not over yet. US jets and coalition artillery lit up the sky over Baghouz until the small hours. The final push against ISIS is underway. This is as close as anyone gets to the front line in Baghouz. We can't have too much light to avoid being targeted ourselves, but you can see artillery fire coming from all sides on that tiny town. This is hoped finally the end of the so-called Islamic State in Syria. Huge balls of fire rising into the sky and the crash of mortars honing in from all sides. It's thought at least 1,500 jihadis remain inside the last square mile of the so-called Islamic State. Coalition forces report dozens of ISIS fighters dead, despite at least 4 attempted suicide attacks. US-backed troops are pushing forward into the town, but it's unclear what they'll find. Booby-trapped buildings, the hallmark of the ISIS retreat, and a network of tunnels perhaps stretching for miles. No one knows who or what may be down there.
Like I said, during this lull, we can see ISIS fighters freely walking around, and it seems that they're able to go down into the tunnels during the bombardments and then come back up again. And I think the tunnels are going to be a real obstacle for this coalition going forward. And even when this town is cleared, beating their ideology will be far harder to erase. Paula?
All right, James Longman reporting from Syria. James, thank you. Cecilia?
Okay, Paula, let's turn to the chaos on the court. Fights erupting at multiple NBA games overnight. One of those brawls ending in some players getting ejected. ABC's Dan Macedo is here with all the details.
Suffice it to say, tempers were flaring in the NBA last night. First, 2 players got ejected for getting into a fight with each other. Then another ended up in an altercation with a fan.
Baca and Chris exchanging blows.
It was an ugly night for the NBA, with a brawl in Cleveland
Grab him by the throat.
and an altercation with fans in Utah. The first incident happened during the Cavs-Raptors matchup. Toronto center Serge Ibaka and Cleveland forward Marquise Chris both ejected from the game after being knocked to the ground. Ibaka grabs Chris by the neck, and the shoving begins.
But a chokehold around the neck. Punches thrown.
The fighting led to Ibaka's 8th ejection in 10 years and the 3rd for Chris in as many seasons. In Utah, Thunder star Russell Westbrook was caught on camera threatening fans after Westbrook says the fans hurled insults at him. The 5-time NBA All-Star is expressing no regrets.
Young man and his wife in the stands told me to get down on my knees like he used to. And for me, that's just completely disrespectful to me. I think it's racial.
He's got to be a professional.
Speaking after the game, the fan claims he never cursed at Westbrook and never said anything inappropriate.
I just told him, I'm like, just sit down and ice your knees, bro.
He says his main issue is Westbrook's comments toward his girlfriend.
She's 5 feet tall and 110 pounds, man. I mean, never said a word to him. Her first NBA game ever. Welcome to the NBA.
Well, that fan and a few others were issued warning cards, a reminder to all the fans out there that verbal abuse actually violates the NBA's fan code of conduct.
Yikes.
Not allowed to do it.
Yikes.
Not a good look for the fans, not a good look for Russell Westbrook.
And just not a nice thing to do.
No, not at all.
You don't even necessarily need a warning card. Just
No.
don't do it.
Yeah.
People say it's part of the game. Shouldn't be. All right. Thanks, Diane. We want to take a look at this. It's a live look at the first live broadcast from deep below the ocean surface. How beautiful is this? So these British scientists, they're on a groundbreaking underwater expedition beneath the Indian Ocean to search for undiscovered marine life. This is one of the world's least explored areas. So for 7 weeks, they're going to dive 200 feet in 2-person submarines, but they're going to have to battle fierce currents, monsoons, all while gathering data in order to protect and preserve ocean life. So if you've got a couple hours to kill, tune into the live broadcast.
Sounds fun. World down there.
Beautiful. Yeah.
You know, there's a spring break alert as millions of Americans are going on vacation for spring break. We're going to tell you where the State Department is issuing advisories as questions grow about a deadly incident. This teen fell to his death at one of the most popular destinations.
And take a look at this. This is the moment right there that has Bachelor fans on the edge of their seats. The reality show Shocker ahead. But first, let's go back over to Rob.
All right, we mentioned that storm. That's going to be a windstorm, also going to be a snow and rainstorm. 2 to 4 inches of rainfall on top of snowpack. Could see some flooding across the central U.S. with this. Time for your Tuesday trivia now with Sensodyne Rapid Relief.
In terms of treating sensitivity, 3 days is really fast. The dentist is going to be able to provide that to their patient. Sensodyne Rapid Relief, in my opinion, is a game changer. It's going to let the dentist offer their patient sensitivity relief in 3 days. It has a formulation that lays down a barrier of protection against sensitivity. Within 3 days, say over the course of a weekend, you're going to start feeling significant results. To say that it works in 3 days really is a big deal.
On the cool side of things today will be your coolest day out of the next 7. Temperatures starting out in the 30s will be just shy of 50 degrees. So some breezy, cool sunshine for your Tuesday. The next weather maker coming in on Friday with rain in the morning, some gusty thunderstorms for the afternoon. That system will bring quite a bit of rain and some high winds to the area. Could have winds over 40 miles per hour, but for the upcoming weekend, it's looking nice and sunny. The high Saturday, 51. St. Patrick's Day, 50.
A lot more coming up. We'll be right back.
Oh, no. Are you okay, Mike?
Yeah, got a pretty big fender bender here.
Don't worry. State Farm's got you covered.
That's great to hear. Robin, it's
going on?